Good morning. It's Tuesday, 5th of April 2022, and it's 6:45 in the morning. I meant to get this episode out this weekend but ran out of time, so I'm just taking a few minutes before we start work in a minute to introduce this particular episode. First of all, I'd like to start by saying thank you everybody for all your lovely comments to our previous episodes. I think reading your comments is actually something that Randy and I enjoy more than anything else about managing this channel, so thank you very much indeed for that. And I mention it also because there's one topic that's cropped up a couple of times recently, and I did promise to one commentator that I would add something in this episode to address it, and that's Patreon. We've been asked a number of occasions why we don't do it. First of all, thank you very much for all of those people who wish we did, so that they could help us. That's absolutely fantastic, but there are good reasons why we don't, and I want to explain that now. It's very simple really. Basically, we don't think we really warrant it. We don't think we can justify it, and that for two reasons. Although most of our, or all of the episodes so far, have really been about boat restoration, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're not really a boat restoration channel in the sense that most are on YouTube, and I think if we accept Patreon, many people who follow this channel because of the boat restoration content will be disappointed, because really Randy's and my plans are to go exploring the world, sailing in Josefine, not to build her. We're having to build her. Is something that we didn't plan. And so we hope to bring that stage of our life to an end as soon as possible. In fact, there's a prospect that we may get finished in the next sort of 3 months. And so I think if we accept Patreon and people subscribe to it, they'll, as I say, they'll be disappointed when we actually stop doing that content. The other reason is that because we're so focused on getting Josefine finished, it's very difficult to get a video out once a week, although we do try. We've never managed it yet, I don't think. I'd hoped this was going to be a first, but this one's, I think, 1 or possibly even 2 days late. And I think there is an unspoken understanding with Patreon and YouTube that channels produce a video once a week. I think it's perfectly reasonable that Patreon subscribers expect that in return, and at the moment we just can't achieve that. Now, we will be videoing when we go sailing, and so when the channel content will change a little bit, and we will have more time to produce videos. So at that stage, we may well offer Patreon. I mean, we're certainly going to need to find a source of income to plug the gap in our dwindling savings, otherwise we won't be sailing for very long. So unless we can find some other means of making money, then yes, we may well offer Patreon at that time. I mean, I certainly believe that making videos for public entertainment is a perfectly honourable job, and I certainly work very hard at it, probably harder than many of the jobs I've done in my life. So I'm not against it from that point of view. In the meantime, of course, we can generate a little bit of income from the advertising revenue that YouTube share with some of its bigger channels. But to do that, we really need to grow. I mean, we do get small amounts now, but it's tiny. And we need to get the subscriber rate up and the viewer rate up to really get any meaningful sort of income from it. So if anybody who really wants to help, if you haven't already, then please subscribe to the channel. So that's really all I want to say about that. So to this episode, you'll recall that I ended last week's episode halfway through explaining or describing our plans for the fit out inside Josefine, and I mentioned two issues that were very influential in how we laid out, how the plan evolved. And that was the moving of the toilet into the shower, and the fact that Randy and I wanted a nice galley that was easy to use, practical and easy to use. And those two factors were very influential in how the rest of the layout evolved. Excuse me, it's very early in the morning. And so I'm going to pick up where I left off last week by mentioning one other very influential factor, and that was crew berths. So I'm going to talk about that and then begin to tell you the preparations that we had to do before we could actually start building that. Remember, this is going back to 2017, so the explanations you hear from me are a video that I shot in 2017, and I'm explaining our fit-out plans whilst I'm already surrounded by the beginnings of them. I'd already started them, so halfway through the video we'll skip backwards a little bit and show you all the preparation work that I had to do before I could even start building that, so just in case there's a little bit of confusion about that. So yeah, catch you later. This is not a gentleman's yacht. It's an old working fishing boat. It was designed to have a lot of old wet smelly fish in it, and so there's nothing left of the original fit out. I don't know what the original fit out was in 1931, but it won't have been much because it was a working boat, so the living area would have been pretty sparse, and I don't suppose it would be pretty practical for today's use anyway, living on the boat, but that's long gone. And the fit out that was in the boat when we bought it was atrocious, badly built, badly thought out and poorly executed. So I just ripped the whole lot out and started again. That made my life a lot easier in many ways. But then I had to decide what to put back in. We needed some crew berths, obviously. Well, I say obviously, but yes, we needed some crew berths because there's going to be times when we're going to need help to do various passages. So again, I thought, well, berths are where you lie down, and they're ideal for putting into cramped space under decks where you can't stand up. That's the perfect place for them, and that's what I've done. I've put starboard and a port berth box. I decided to make box berths rather than just open berths. I could have just made them open, but it didn't seem any point really. By making them into box berths, they become extremely good storage areas where things are out of eyesight. You don't want a pile of all your personal possessions on a temporary berth somewhere. So by being box berths, they make good cupboards effectively, but they also make then good berths for the crew because it gives a great deal of privacy. And I've built a lot of storage in underneath them. Wherever possible, I built storage. So wherever there's space underneath, I built that. So the box berths, you can see one just here on the just behind me on the starboard side, and another one on the port side, and that worked out really well. So the planning stage over, I pretty much got in my head what I wanted to do, and I knew how I was going to go about doing it. Then it was just a matter of getting started, and the first job to do was to get rid of or to investigate anyway, the ballast, or some of the ballast in this central hold area. Now the ballast in between the frames that runs halfway up the frames on the hull down into the centre of the bilge area is stable, and it's made up of, it looks like concrete, and I thought it was concrete, and I think the surveyor even said it was concrete, but it isn't. It's compacted slag, and it's really, really hard. It's hard to break up. I mean, I don't know how the hell you would ever get it out. I don't need to, and I don't want to, so I've left it. And then you had the central area, which was really, really badly broken up. And that was the part of the ballast that was between the floor timbers. And the floor timbers themselves were very, very badly broken up, particularly just in front of the shower area. And not because of the shower, it was completely unrelated, that the water couldn't get from the shower to them. But they had pretty much disintegrated. And the ballast around them had all broken up. Water was clearly getting in and rising up through it. Now that ballast in the centre, which was on top of the other, I think was put down almost certainly at a different date, because it came away relatively easily. It certainly was not part of the original ballast that was put in, because when I started breaking it up to take it out, there was a defined area between the two layers, like geology, so I started off tentatively just taking out the really, really loose bits in and around the shower area just behind me, and one thing led to another. As I started working through it, I take up one loose bit only to find that the bit adjacent to that was just as loose and came away easily. As I took one bit away, another bit came away. And so I started finding myself working right through the boat, and well, through this hold area, because that's the only area where there was a problem. And indeed, ended up taking up the whole of this central area, which in a way made my life easier for what had to come next, which was to replace the floor frames. They were completely knackered. They were split, broken, bent. There wasn't one of them that could be reused. I replaced them with some nice oak timber, and I doubled up on them so the weight is better distributed now on the sole, and it made it a much better base for fitting out the galley, for instance, and the centre island that the sink is attached to and everything. So it made my life much easier for the future. It was a big job, it was a dirty job. I weighed everything because I was conscious that this wasn't a decorative stuff I was taking out. It was there for a reason, the ballast. I then decided, using some old scrap sheets of ply, to lay down the floor area as per the plans that I'd drawn up on paper, and that way I would be able to walk out the areas that I'd planned to see if they actually worked in the real three dimensions of real life. So that's what I did. I cut the sheets to the sort of shape and size and area where I'd planned, and I laid them on the floor and then basically walked around them to see how it would work. I mean, the main bit was this island that sort of sticks out into the area in front of me, and the galley, and of course the toilet behind me. And that was really, really useful because it did actually throw up some problems that needed to be dealt with, and I altered the plans accordingly. So that was very useful. I also at the same time ordered a new heating system, and I was able to make sure that I had the space for that to go into. Slightly more of a problem than other parts of the boat, because of course it's something that's going to get very hot. You need to walk past it, it needs to have its own little space. So that worked really, really well. And so having done that, I then was able to start on the work itself. Once I decided I could start on that work, I thought that's it, I'm off, I can start now. But I then came across another problem, and this is quite a big one, and it's an ongoing problem as you work through, and that is your levels. Again, not being a land-based property, which is nice and rectangular, even old properties have got more rectangles than the boat has. Where do you decide? What do you decide on your lines and your levels? And a particular boat like Josefine, that's got a nice swept sort of curving deck. The deck curves up, quite high at the bow. So it's sort of a banana shaped, if you like. So where on earth do you start? How do you start? And then I had to decide. I had to pick something somewhere in the boat that I could use as a datum. And then you have to keep going back to the datum, because as you build the boat, you keep changing the ballast of the boat, the trim of the boat. What I also discovered is you've got a boat like this with that curved deck, you can't have one datum. The datum has to keep changing. So as I move forward towards the cabin at the front, I have to change the datum. And it took a long time to decide how to go about doing that. Largely, it isn't just a question of science either. It's not strictly just a technical problem. It's also what looks right. So it's a combination of going between technically what's right, what fits in with what's already there, and what is going to be level. So you don't want, for instance, your surfaces, when you're using them, to be at a crazy angle. They've got to be more or less sort of level, so everything doesn't roll off. I mean, the boat's moving all the time, obviously, but you don't want something that's obviously permanently at a very steep angle. And also it's got to fit in with the other features on the boat. So this coach house that's around me at the moment, there's lots of vertical lines in it, and of course the basic horizontal line at the base of it, and the top, of course. So whatever you build in here has to sort of fit in with that, otherwise it's going to look crazy. The original fit out has sort of not not bothered with any of that, and there were some really bad examples of it. It's a little bit of alchemy, it's a bit of mixing this and a bit of that, and what works at the end of the day, but it needs some careful attention. I stripped off, because it was easy to do before I built anything else, all the old paintwork. There was a mixture of all sorts of paint on this boat. Most of it seems to be household emulsion paints, but some crazy colours and effects. It looked awful, and so it all had to come off. I would have liked to have just rubbed it down and painted over it, but to be honest, it was such crap paint, and the wood underneath needed filling here and there, or repairing here and there, or replacing here and there. So in the end, a hot gun and a scraper is far quicker than rubbing down. It's easier, cheaper and quicker. So that's what I did. I used a hot gun and a scraper, and I scraped, and as you can see, it's all now stripped off. It needs a quick sanding over just to get rid of all the rough edges, and then it can be undercoated and painted. So Randy doesn't know it yet, but when she comes home on holiday, that's what she's going to be doing, I hope. When we first bought the boat, the cooker was in a pretty sorry state, but in shocking condition. I think salt water has quite clearly been sitting on top of it for a very long time, where it's been dripping through the deck. The previous owner hadn't used the boat for 2 years, and so it hadn't been maintained well at all. Cost 150 quid plus VAT, so it came to just shy of 200 quid for the spare parts, but that was still way less than it would cost for a new cooker. And bearing in mind the cooker hadn't been used very much, it seemed to me well worth the risk trying to rebuild it. So I bought the parts for the hob, which was the worst part. I had to replace not just the fancy little rings on top, but also the gas cups underneath, and a gas line which just fell apart when I tried to take it off because it was so corroded into the cups. So I painted up the little bits of corrosion, replaced all the bits, banged it together, and attached a gas line and tried it, and it works perfectly. So we've got a nice oven and grill. It smoked an awful lot when I lit the grill, but I think that's just almost certainly lots of dirt and dust and everything that collected there, because it's not been used for probably 5 years. And I look forward to giving you the next update when hopefully the library, the nav station and the seating area are finished, and I look forward to that. Hello again. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to have to be quick. Actually, it's 7 o'clock and I can hear Nielsen's crew arriving behind me, so we've got to crack on. The second half of this episode is a little bit different, because Randy and I thought you might like to know what we get up to when we're not working on Josefine. And the truth is nothing, really, because we're always working on Josefine. But ironically, in the first 4 years of this project, remember this is going back now to 2016-17, when Randy and I had to separate, when Randy went to Copenhagen to work to earn good money while I worked on the boat, ironically we actually did have a little bit of social time, because of course we needed to meet up from time to time, which we did actually twice a year, once at Christmas and once in the summer. And these final 3 clips I'm going to show you now perfectly sum up our life at that time, outside of work I should say. Typically we went to France for Christmas in the winter to cut firewood for my mother. We visited my mother, who lives in France, in the same area where Randy and I worked and lived. And this first clip is actually me on my own, because Randy was working that Christmas and I spent the New Year with her rather than Christmas. I went to my mother's for Christmas to cut firewood, and then I travelled up to Copenhagen to see Randy. So this first clip is very short. It's just me cutting a bit of firewood for my mother and giving a sort of general Christmas greeting to our friends and family. What's interesting about this one is our incredible optimism as to when we were going to finish Josefine. I won't tell you because it is quite laughable really, but it comes up in the video. So after that, as I say, I travelled to Copenhagen to spend the New Year with Randy. And although I didn't film that, what I did film was my return from seeing Randy back to the UK. And the significance of that is, I think that it just shows quite nicely the difficulties really of living apart. during that time. So you might enjoy that. And also it shows you our narrowboat oak, which I was still living on at that time. It wasn't sold by that time. So that's quite interesting. And finally, the last clip is a summer holiday. Again, same year, 2017. And Randy and I, again, actually on this occasion, met up in France. Sometimes Randy came to the UK, sometimes I went to Copenhagen to see her. On this occasion, we went to my mother's house in France again. And we had a week in the beautiful area of the Loire Valley where Randy and I lived and worked for many years, running a flying school, if you recall. And so I really like this particular clip because it perfectly shows all of the lovely things about that area that Randy and I loved, why we loved living there. So I hope you enjoy it as much. And well, à tout à l'heure. Until next time, next episode, hi. Hello everybody from the Loire Valley in France. While Randy's beavering away in Copenhagen, I've taken the opportunity to come over here and spend Christmas with my mother in her cottage here and cut her some firewood. I hope you're all well. Randy's and my plans are coming together. As far as Josefine is concerned, we hope that by the end of next year we'll be launched and on our worldly voyages. But for now, just to say, from the Loire Valley in France, a very Merry Christmas to you all and a very Happy New Year in 2017. Love from Randy and I.
Train at platform 1.
Bye.